The officer's gun was pointed straight at the black motorcyclist who had broken no law. Officer Harlan Reese tore the helmet from the rider's head, revealing a face carved from patience and resolve. "Fancy bike for your kind. Where'd you steal it?" he sneered. The rider's sharp eyes locked onto Reese's nameplate and badge with quiet assessment. Officer Elias Grant dumped the saddlebags. Military documents scattered across the ground like confetti. "Colonel Darius Hale," Grant read mockingly. "Yeah, right. Playing soldier." Reese pressed a boot against the rider's back. "If you're a colonel, I'm the commander-in-chief." The rider spoke once, his voice steel beneath silk. "I need to make one call. Lawyers don't work roadside." Reese laughed as the cuffs bit into the man's wrists. A dangerous calm settled over the rider's features. "You have little time before you destroy your career." As the patrol car pulled away, military satellites overhead silently tracked its movement. Colonel Darius Hale eased his custom Harley along the sun-baked highway outside the small town. His riding gear was premium but understated, offering no hint of his decades of military service or his current role directing Pentagon Special Operations logistics. The charity ride supporting veterans' mental health brought him through small towns like this one regularly. Today, like most days off base, he was simply another black man on an expensive motorcycle. Officers Reese and Grant idled in their patrol car at the town limits. Reese, a seasoned officer with many years on the force and several excessive force complaints buried in his file, drummed impatient fingers on the steering wheel. The promotion he had long expected remained elusive, souring his outlook. Beside him, Grant, young and fresh-faced, watched Reese for cues on how real policing worked. "Look at that," Reese said as Hale's Harley approached. "Pretty nice ride." Grant nodded. "Custom work's not cheap, not too nice for around here." Reese's eyes narrowed. "Bet there's a reason he can afford it." The implication hung in the air, unsupported by anything except assumption. Hale pulled into a gas station, movements efficient and precise. He filled the tank, then entered the store for water. The owner, Mrs. Eleanor Hayes, a gray-haired woman with sharp eyes, noticed his military ID when he paid. "Thank you for your service," she said with genuine respect. Hale offered a modest smile. "Just doing my job, ma'am." Back in the patrol car, Reese's attention remained fixed on Hale as he exited the station. "Let's see what he's running." They pulled out behind the motorcycle. No traffic violations occurred, but Reese activated the lights anyway. Hale signaled properly and pulled to the shoulder, kickstand down, hands visible on the handlebars. Textbook compliance. Through his mirrors, Hale watched the officers approach. His expression remained neutral, but his eyes held the weariness born from previous experiences. The insignia on his military ID would not protect him from what came next. It never had. Reese approached with his hand resting on his holster, stance aggressive. "License and registration." "May I reach for my wallet, officer?" Hale asked, voice carefully modulated. "Slowly," Reese barked, the word itself an accusation. Hale retrieved his military ID and vehicle registration with deliberate movements. Reese snatched them, studying the ID with open skepticism. "Colonel?" He looked at Grant with a smirk. "In what army?" "United States Army," Hale replied evenly. "Decades of service." Grant shifted uncomfortably. Reese ignored the statement entirely. "Where are you coming from? Where are you headed?" The rapid-fire questions came without acknowledging Hale's identification. Hale explained the charity ride calmly, mentioning the veterans event he was attending. His words were precise and respectful despite the treatment. Reese's expression hardened. "Step off the bike now." "May I ask why I'm being asked to dismount, officer?" Hale maintained eye contact. "Because I said so," Reese's voice rose. "Do it now." Hale swung his leg over the motorcycle with military precision, knowing exactly what happens to black men who question authority. Hale stood beside his motorcycle, hands visible at his sides. Sunlight gleamed off the polished chrome as Reese circled him like a predator assessing prey. Grant hung back, uncertainty creeping into his posture as he examined the military ID more closely. "This doesn't look right," Reese claimed, though the military ID with its security features and holographic elements was clearly legitimate. A lot of fakes going around these days. Hale maintained his composure, voice steady. "Officer, I've properly identified myself. May I ask why I was stopped?" "We've had reports of drug trafficking on this route." The lie rolled easily off Reese's tongue. No such reports existed. "Motorcycles are common transport." "I understand your concern," Hale responded. "I assure you, I'm simply passing through on a charity ride." Reese's eyes narrowed. "Mind if we take a look at your bags?" It was not really a question. Without waiting for consent, Reese nodded to Grant, who approached the motorcycle saddlebags. "Officer," Hale interjected, his tone firm but not confrontational. "With respect, you need probable cause to search my vehicle." Reese stepped closer, using his height to intimidate. Quoting a search, "What are you hiding, Colonel?" The title dripped with contempt. Grant paused, glancing between the two men. Something about this felt wrong, but he was too new to challenge Reese's lead. I'm not refusing, Hale clarified. I'm stating my constitutional rights as a citizen. Step back and put your hands on your head, Reese ordered, voice hardening. His hand drifted toward his holster, a calculated gesture. Hale complied with precision, military bearing evident in every movement. I'd like to speak with your supervisor, officer. Oh, you want special treatment? Reese sneered. Not happening. The radio crackled with a report of a disturbance across town. Reese deliberately ignored it, fixated on Hale. Hale noticed Reese's body camera was off. He checked the time on his watch. The gesture subtle but deliberate. He was documenting everything. Grant began searching the saddlebags without authorization. He found a sealed envelope bearing military insignia. Reese grabbed it, tearing the envelope open without care. That's classified material, officer. Hale's voice changed subtly, a commander's authority seeping through his civilian restraint. Sure it is, Reese scoffed, deliberately scattering the papers across the ground where the wind caught them, sending them tumbling along the roadside. A silver sedan slowed as it passed. The driver, a middle-aged woman, began recording with her phone. Reese shouted at her to move along, his attention momentarily divided. Hale stood motionless, his military training evident in his disciplined response. Each violation was mentally catalogued, each moment recorded in his memory with quiet precision. Where'd you get this bike? Reese demanded, running his hand possessively over the handlebars. Seems too expensive for... He caught himself before finishing the blatantly biased statement. I purchased it legally, Hale responded evenly. The registration is in your hand. Reese unclipped his handcuffs with a metallic click that cut through the air like a promise. On your knees, he commanded, jingling the cuffs. Now. Hale complied, lowering himself to the scorching asphalt. The heat burned through his riding pants, but his face betrayed nothing. Decades of military discipline manifested as dignified silence in the face of humiliation. Reese grabbed Hale's helmet from the motorcycle seat, yanking it roughly by the strap. No concealing your face out here. He tossed the expensive helmet carelessly onto the ground where it bounced once before settling in the dirt. Hale's close-cropped gray hair and distinguished features came fully into view. A small scar traced his right cheekbone, a reminder of combat long ago. His eyes, clear and penetrating, continued their steady assessment of the situation. These eyes had witnessed war zones across continents, now watching injustice unfold on American soil. Colonel Hale, Reese mocked, examining the military ID again. Sure, and I'm General Patton. He flipped the ID carelessly into the dust near Hale's knees. Grant continued rummaging through the motorcycle, pulling out a small metal case. He opened it to reveal a collection of military challenge coins and medals. His expression shifted, discomfort growing as evidence mounted that Hale might actually be who he claimed. Reese, these look legitimate, Grant said quietly. Reese ignored him, focused on Hale's wallet now, emptying its contents onto the ground. Credit cards, receipts, and a photograph spilled out. The photo showed Hale in full dress uniform standing among high-ranking officials. Reese glanced at it, then deliberately stepped over the image. Hale remained silent, eyes tracking Reese's badge number, memorizing details with military precision. Nothing escaped his notice. The timestamp on Reese's watch, Grant's hesitation, the gathering audience across the street. Where'd you steal these military items from? Reese demanded, kicking at the scattered challenge coins. Those are my earned decorations, officer, Hale replied, his voice level despite the indignity of his position. Across the street at the gas station, a small crowd began to gather. Mrs. Eleanor Hayes stood in the doorway, hand over her mouth. Beside her, customers raised phones recording the scene. The audience grew by the minute, silent witnesses to the unfolding abuse of power. Reese noticed the attention. Nothing to see here, he shouted before turning back to Hale. Your kind always causes a scene. Hale's expression did not change, but his eyes registered the comment, cataloging it alongside every other violation. Grant discovered a satellite phone in the side compartment of the motorcycle, military-grade communications equipment, compact and sophisticated. Look at this, he called to Reese. Satellite phone. Reese snatched it. Drug dealers use these to avoid detection. He examined the device with exaggerated suspicion. High-tech stuff to stay off the grid. That's standard military issue for my position, Hale stated flatly. Reese laughed, tossing the expensive device onto the ground beside the scattered papers. Sure it is, Colonel. Officer Reese, Hale said, emphasizing the name. You're making a significant error, Reese froze. How do you know my name? It's on your nameplate, officer, Hale replied, gaze unwavering. What else do you know? Reese demanded, sudden paranoia edging his voice. I know enough to suggest you reconsider your actions, Hale said, each word measured and precise. Reese's face contorted with anger at what he perceived as a threat. He yanked Hale's arms behind his back, cuffing him with unnecessary force. Threatening an officer now? Hale winced slightly as the metal bit into his wrist but maintained his composure. Maybe we should call this in, Grant suggested, uncertainty growing. Check his story. He's playing you, Reese snapped. These guys always have a story. Hale spoke again, calm but firm. I need to make a call very soon. It's a matter of national security. Reese laughed. National security. You'll call your lawyer from the station. That would be unwise, Hale stated simply. Reese dragged Hale toward the patrol car. You're under arrest for possession of falsified government documents and resisting arrest. I haven't resisted, Hale pointed out reasonably, and my documents are authentic. The crowd across the street had grown larger. More phones recorded the scene, turning it into a spectacle of injustice captured in real time. As Hale was forced into the back seat, his eyes met those of an elderly veteran in the crowd who recognized exactly who they were arresting. The elderly veteran watched in disbelief as the patrol car pulled away. Frank Ellison, a former Army sergeant, recognized Colonel Hale instantly. Those distinctive features had appeared in military publications recently. Ellison's weathered hands trembled with indignation as he hurried toward the gas station. Mrs. Hayes, he called to the store owner. That officer just arrested Colonel Darius Hale. Mrs. Hayes's eyes widened. The motorcyclist, are you sure? Served decades, run special ops logistics at the Pentagon. Ellison's voice carried the certainty of someone who still followed military news closely. My grandson serves under his command. That Reese has been trouble for years. Mrs. Hayes shook her head. Always picking on the wrong people. Ellison's jaw set with determination. Not this time, I need to use your phone. Inside the patrol car, Hale sat upright despite the handcuffs forcing his shoulders back uncomfortably. The discomfort was meaningless. He had endured far worse. His military training included resistance to interrogation scenarios, preparing officers for captivity. This situation differed in jurisdiction, but followed familiar patterns of power and control. Reese drove, repeatedly glancing in the rearview mirror. Hale's steady gaze unsettled him. I'm telling you, Grant said quietly. Something doesn't add up. Maybe we should verify his ID before processing. You going soft? Reese snapped. He's playing you. These guys always do. Hale remained silent, observing the time on his wristwatch. The military-grade timepiece began a silent countdown sequence visible only to him. Embedded communications technology was activating emergency protocols. At the gas station, Frank Ellison punched a number into Mrs. Hayes' phone with urgency. His grandson, Lieutenant David Ellison, answered on the second ring. Lieutenant Ellison speaking. David, it's Grandpa. Listen carefully. The elder Ellison explained the situation in rapid, precise military shorthand. They've arrested Colonel Hale. Roadside harassment, no cause. Silence on the line. Then, Colonel Hale, the deputy director. On what charges? Looked like profiling, pure and simple. Officer named Reese. I need to inform command immediately. Lieutenant Ellison responded, his voice shifting to formal alert mode. Thank you, sir. The call ended. Frank Ellison handed the phone back to Mrs. Hayes. His expression was grim but satisfied. Now we wait. Inside a secure military facility nearby, Lieutenant Ellison moved with purpose through security checkpoints. His access badge opened doors that remained locked to most personnel. He reached his commanding officer's office, knocked once, and entered without waiting. Sir, we have a situation. Colonel Hale has been detained by local police. The commanding officer looked up sharply. On what authority? None, sir. Appears to be harassment. Alarm spread through the chain of command with military efficiency. Phones rang. Secure messages transmitted. Personnel mobilized. In the patrol car, Hale broke his silence. Officer Reese, this is your final opportunity to correct your mistake. Reese scoffed, but uncertainty flickered across his face. Save it for the judge. Very soon your actions will have consequences you're unprepared for, Hale stated, voice devoid of threat, simply conveying facts. Reese forced a laugh that sounded hollow, even to his own ears. At the military base, the emergency response team assembled. Officers received briefing in rapid, efficient bursts of information. Colonel Hale has been illegally detained while carrying classified materials, the base commander explained. The Secretary of Defense has been notified and has authorized immediate intervention. Military police vehicles and Humvees lined up at the gate, engines running, precision and urgency in every movement. The base commander spoke into a secure line. Confirm satellite tracking on the patrol vehicle. We have visual, affirmative, sir, full track established. The military convoy began moving out, a coordinated response to a threat against national security personnel. Inside the patrol car, Hale maintained his composed silence. Grant checked his phone, growing increasingly anxious. Reese, you should see this. He held up his screen. Social media is blowing up with videos of the arrest. People are saying he's really a high-ranking officer. Since when do we police by Twitter? Reese snapped, but sweat beaded on his forehead. Very soon now, Officer Reese, Hale stated calmly. Until what? Reese demanded, knuckles white on the steering wheel. Hale did not answer. His silent dignity was more powerful than any threat could be. Police dispatch crackled urgently over the radio as a formation of black helicopters appeared on the horizon. Chief Victor Langford's phone rang in the middle of a meeting. He glanced at the display, the mayor's office, and excused himself. The mayor never called directly unless something was wrong. "Langford," he answered, stepping into the hallway. "Chief, what the hell is happening?" The mayor's voice crackled with tension. "I just got off the phone with the governor who got a call from the Pentagon about one of your officers detaining a high-ranking military official." Langford's stomach dropped. "Sir, I don't know what—" "Fix it now." The call ended abruptly. Langford rushed to dispatch, sweat dampening his collar. "Get me Officer Reese immediately." "We've been trying, sir," the dispatcher responded. "He's not answering radio calls." "Where is he?" "Approaching the station, a few minutes out." Langford strode toward the station entrance, barking orders as he moved. "I want every officer on duty outside now." Meanwhile, Reese and Grant approached the station with Hale still cuffed in the back seat. Reese had deliberately turned off his radio, ignoring the increasingly frantic calls from dispatch. Hale sat calmly, watching the time. "Your chief is trying to reach you." "How would you know that?" Reese snapped, eyes flicking nervously to the rearview mirror. "Because very soon, your career in law enforcement ends," Hale stated without emotion. "Pure assessment, not threat." Reese forced a laugh, but his hands tightened on the wheel. As they pulled into the station parking lot, an unusual scene unfolded. The entire department seemed to have assembled outside. Chief Langford stood front and center, face ashen. "Reese, stop right there," Langford shouted the moment the patrol car came to a halt. "Release him immediately." Reese exited slowly, confusion evident. "Chief, uncuff him now." Langford rushed forward. "Do you have any idea who you've arrested?" Reese hesitated, defensive posture setting in. He had fake military ID. "That's Colonel Darius Hale, Deputy Director of Special Operations Logistics at the Pentagon." Langford's voice carried across the parking lot, each word a nail in Reese's career coffin. Grant moved immediately, opening the rear door and carefully removing Hale's handcuffs. "I'm sorry, sir," he murmured, genuine regret in his voice. The distinctive thrum of helicopter rotors filled the air. Multiple black SUVs with government plates screeched into the parking lot, forming a perimeter. Hale stepped from the patrol car, straightening his jacket with dignified movements. Despite the ordeal, his composure remained intact. "Thank you, Officer Grant." Military personnel in crisp uniforms exited the vehicles, approaching with purposeful strides. Reese backed away, desperation creeping into his voice. He was acting suspicious. "I was riding my motorcycle on a public road," Hale corrected him calmly. Langford turned to Reese, fury barely contained. "You've really done it this time." The military officers surrounded Hale, creating a protective formation. A senior officer stepped forward, saluting sharply. "Colonel, are you all right, sir?" Hale returned the salute with precision. "I'm fine, Major." Reese watched in dawning horror as Hale's true position became undeniable. The military's response confirmed what he had refused to believe. Hale addressed the Major. "The classified documents that were scattered need to be recovered immediately." "Already in progress, sir," the Major responded, gesturing to a team deploying from one of the vehicles. The ground vibrated beneath their feet as the first of many Humvees crested the hill, green metal catching the afternoon sun. The police station parking lot transformed before everyone's eyes. Military precision replaced civilian chaos as Humvees established a perimeter, their diesel engines rumbling in synchronized harmony. Military police in full tactical gear deployed methodically, securing the area with practiced efficiency. At the center of this operation stood Hale, no longer the humiliated detainee, but the clear authority figure. Officers and officials now orbited around him like planets around a sun. The power shift was palpable. Chief Langford led Hale inside the station, apologizing profusely with every step. "Colonel, I can't express how deeply sorry the department is for this incident." Hale walked beside him, posture military straight. "This isn't about me, Chief. This is about procedure, training, and bias." Langford nodded quickly. "I understand, sir. Officer Reese has had issues before." Hale stopped, fixing Langford with a penetrating gaze. "Yet he remains on your force." The chief had no response, the uncomfortable truth hanging between them. Outside, Reese attempted to slip away amid the confusion, edging toward his personal vehicle. Two military MPs intercepted him with synchronized movements, appearing as if from nowhere. "Officer Reese," one stated flatly, "Colonel Hale requires your presence." Reese's face hardened, defiance masking fear. He has no authority over local police. The MP's expression did not change. "Perhaps not, but the FBI agents who just arrived do." Two individuals in dark suits approached, credentials already extended. "Officer Reese, Special Agents Lena Cruz and Amir Khan, FBI Civil Rights Division." The blood drained from Reese's face. "Civil Rights Division." Agent Cruz nodded once. "We'll need a complete statement regarding today's events." "I was just doing my job," Reese protested, voice rising defensively. "Were you?" Agent Cruz asked quietly. We have witness statements and video evidence suggesting otherwise. Inside the station, Hale conferred with military legal officers in a glass-walled conference room. Their discussion focused on jurisdictional boundaries, the interplay between civilian and military authority. "Sir, we could handle this internally," a military lawyer suggested, leaning forward. "Make it go away." Hale shook his head firmly. "No, that perpetuates the problem. This needs to be addressed through proper civilian channels." "With respect, Colonel, this could become a media circus." "Then it becomes one," Hale stated. "Accountability requires visibility." Outside the conference room, Officer Grant waited nervously. When Hale emerged, Grant approached with hesitant steps. "Sir, I want to apologize," he began, voice unsteady. "I should have stopped it." Hale studied the young officer, measuring his character. "Yes, you should have. Moral courage is harder than physical courage, Officer Grant. Remember that." Grant nodded, the lesson landing with the weight of truth. The station doors burst open as the mayor arrived, straightening his tie as he hurried toward Hale, his hand extended preemptively. "Colonel Hale, this is a terrible misunderstanding," he announced, political smile firmly in place. Hale looked at the offered hand but did not take it. "This wasn't a misunderstanding, Mayor. This was systemic failure." The mayor's hand dropped slowly, smile fading. Behind him, news vans began arriving outside. Reporters deployed equipment with practiced speed. A senior Pentagon official emerged from a black SUV, face grim as aides scrambled to clear his path to Hale. General Theodore Vance strode through the station doors, his stars glinting under fluorescent lights. Junior officers snapped to attention as he passed. His presence transformed the police station into an extension of the Pentagon's authority, civilian jurisdiction temporarily eclipsed by military necessity. Vance moved directly to Hale, ignoring the mayor and police officials. "Darius, the Secretary of Defense is demanding updates. This has reached the White House." Hale nodded once, calm amid the accelerating storm. "Tell them I'm handling it, sir." "The classified materials?" Vance asked, lowering his voice. "Being recovered. Breach protocol initiated," Hale confirmed. His eyes tracked the military team currently securing scattered documents outside. "Initial assessment indicates no critical compromise." Vance noticed Reese being questioned by the FBI agents across the room. His eyes narrowed. "Is that him?" Hale followed his gaze and nodded. Vance's expression hardened. "Want me to destroy him?" "No." Hale's response was immediate. "We follow procedure always." Vance raised an eyebrow but did not argue. The principle had guided Hale's career. Accountability through proper channels, not backroom retribution. Hale's phone rang. He checked the display and straightened almost imperceptibly. "Excuse me, sir, it's the secretary." He stepped away to take the call, responses measured and precise. "Yes, Mr. Secretary, no compromise of sensitive materials. Yes, sir. Proceeding through appropriate channels." Meanwhile, Chief Langford reviewed body camera footage with the FBI agents in his office. Reese had turned his off, but Grant, following department policy, had left his active. The footage showed the entire incident in damning detail. Reese paced in the break room, watched by a stoic MP. He saw fellow officers passing in the hallway, avoiding eye contact, the isolation of the fallen. He attempted conversation with a longtime colleague who merely shook his head and continued walking. Outside, local news vans had multiplied. Reporters set up for live broadcasts. The story spread through social media and news alerts. Military officer illegally detained. Racial profiling incident draws Pentagon response. Hale concluded his call and rejoined General Vance. "Sir, I need to make a statement." Vance frowned. "That might not be advisable given the sensitive nature." "With respect, sir," Hale interrupted gently. "Silence serves no one. This isn't about me, it's about accountability." Vance studied Hale's face, then nodded reluctantly. "Keep it focused on policy, not classified operations." "Always, sir." Hale approached the police station steps where reporters had gathered. The police chief and mayor attempted to position themselves advantageously, each trying to control the narrative. Hale waited patiently as the mayor gave a statement filled with political evasions about unfortunate incidents and pending full investigations. When Hale stepped forward, the crowd quieted naturally. His authority radiated without effort. Decades of command presence were evident in his bearing alone. "I am Colonel Darius Hale, United States Army," he began, voice clear and measured. "What happened today happens to citizens across America daily. The difference is I have the Pentagon behind me. Most victims of profiling don't." The statement landed with devastating simplicity, no embellishment needed. Reporters erupted with questions. Hale answered selectively, each response factual and controlled. No anger, no accusations, just clear statements that cut through political obfuscation. Through the station window, Reese watched his career disintegrate in real time, each of Hale's measured words another nail in its coffin. A sleek government car pulled up as Hale concluded his statement. Someone unexpected had arrived to change the game entirely. The government car's door opened smoothly. A civilian aide emerged first, carrying a garment bag with military precision. He approached Hale with a respectful nod, deliberately ignoring the swarm of reporters shouting questions. Chief Langford hurried over, anxiety evident in his movements. "Colonel, we've prepared a statement of apology from the department." Hale raised a hand slightly. "One moment, Chief." He took the garment bag with a nod of thanks. The exchange appeared insignificant to observers, but General Vance watched with understanding in his eyes. Hale entered the station briefly, the doors closing behind him as reporters speculated wildly. Inside a private office, Hale unzipped the garment bag methodically. He removed his riding jacket, replacing it with a meticulously pressed uniform. The transformation was more than clothing, it was revelation. Outside, Reese watched through a window, confusion replacing defiance. "What's happening now?" he muttered to no one in particular. When the station doors reopened minutes later, Colonel Darius Hale had vanished. In his place stood Major General Darius Hale. 2 stars gleamed on each shoulder of his immaculate dress uniform. Multiple rows of combat decorations spanned his chest, telling a story of exceptional service most civilians could not fully comprehend. The revelation rippled through the assembled crowd. Reporters fumbled with cameras. Police officers stared in disbelief. Reese, glimpsing Hale's true rank for the first time, paled visibly, the blood draining from his face as the magnitude of his error became fully apparent. General Vance approached Hale, rendering a formal salute that Hale returned with equal precision. "General, your security team is quite concerned about today's events." The use of Hale's proper rank sent another shock wave through the audience. Not just a colonel, a general. Hale stepped to the microphones again, his authority now visually undeniable. The crowd fell silent without prompting. "Today was not an isolated incident," he began, voice measured but carrying effortlessly. "It represents a pattern affecting military personnel of color across this nation. In recent times, I've been conducting an official Pentagon review of such incidents near our installations." The revelation landed like thunder. Hale had not merely been a victim of profiling. He had been conducting an official investigation into such incidents. His presence in the town was not coincidental but purposeful, part of a broader Pentagon initiative. The Department of Defense has a duty to ensure the safety and equal treatment of all service members. When a general can be profiled and detained illegally, imagine what happens to our enlisted personnel. Hale gestured to a team of military attorneys who stepped forward carrying tablets and folders. "These officers from our Civil Rights Division have been documenting cases throughout the region." One of the attorneys approached the microphone. "General Hale's case will be added to the many similar incidents we've documented involving military personnel of color in just this region." The mayor shifted uncomfortably, suddenly understanding the broader implications. This was not merely about one traffic stop gone wrong, it was about systemic patterns now documented by the Pentagon itself. Hale continued, "This isn't about one officer or one department. It's about systemic issues requiring systemic solutions." Inside, Reese watched military officers reviewing Grant's body cam footage on tablets, discussing specific violations with FBI agents. His career's implosion unfolded in real time before his eyes. Hale moved with quiet efficiency, directing his staff through the next steps of what was clearly a well-established protocol. The military operation expanded not through force, but through bureaucratic and legal channels that could not be stopped or diverted. A new group of officials entered the station, representatives from the Department of Justice who had been alerted by Hale's office the moment he was detained. "General Hale's detention triggers automatic federal review," announced a DOJ official to the police chief, who realized with growing horror that he was losing control of his department as federal and military authorities established jurisdiction. Hale approached Grant, who stood uncertainly near the dispatch desk. "Officer Grant, you hesitated today. You knew something was wrong but followed anyway." Grant looked down, shame evident. "Yes, sir." "That moment of hesitation shows potential," Hale said quietly. "Build on it. Moral courage can be developed like any muscle." The teaching moment contrasted sharply with Reese's situation. One officer was offered guidance for growth, another faced consequences for entrenchment. Holly returned to the assembled officials, his bearing reflecting absolute authority without arrogance. "I expect full compliance with the federal investigation. Obstruction will not be tolerated." His tone made clear this was not personal vengeance, but institutional correction. The distinction mattered to Hale, who had built his career on principles rather than power. Hale's aide approached with a secure satellite phone, voice lowered respectfully. "Sir, the White House is requesting immediate input on civil rights legislation." Later, the Pentagon's central briefing room hummed with tense energy. Military brass and civilian leadership filled the tiered seating, all eyes focused on the presentation screen. Hale stood at the podium, dress uniform impeccable, his bearing commanding respect without demanding it. "Many documented cases of profiling involving military personnel of color in recent times," Hale stated, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. "A significant portion resulted in illegal detention or search. The vast majority involved no probable cause beyond the service member's appearance and vehicle." The data scrolled across screens. Dates, locations, patterns emerging from individual incidents. Hale's methodical presentation transformed anecdotes into undeniable evidence. The defense secretary leaned forward. General, your recommendations? Hale transitioned to the next slide seamlessly, a comprehensive approach addressing both military and civilian dimensions of the problem. He outlined a multi-pronged strategy: enhanced legal support for service members, mandatory civil rights compliance training for bases and surrounding communities, data sharing between military and civilian authorities, and legislative reforms to strengthen accountability measures. Meanwhile, in the town, the FBI Civil Rights Division had established temporary offices in City Hall. Agents in dark suits moved through the building with purpose, conducting interviews and reviewing years of records. Local officers watched wearily as federal authorities examined traffic stop data, arrest records, and complaint histories. Chief Langford sat across from two FBI agents, tie loosened, exhaustion evident in the slump of his shoulders. He had been answering questions for hours, cooperating fully in an attempt to salvage what remained of his career. Yes, we've had previous complaints about Officer Reese, he admitted. 3 excessive force, 2 discrimination, and the department's response? Agent Cruz asked, already knowing the answer from the files spread between them. Langford shifted uncomfortably. Verbal counseling, 1 suspension for serious complaints. It's not a question, Agent Cruz noted. Across town, the mayor faced an emergency town council meeting. Residents packed the chamber, many holding signs denouncing police practices and demanding accountability. A recall petition circulated through the crowd, already gathering signatures. This national embarrassment falls directly on your administration, a longtime council member stated. The lack of oversight has exposed our community to federal intervention and potential liability. The mayor's attempted defenses fell flat against public outrage fueled by viral videos of Hale's detention. At the police station, Reese sat alone in the break room, suspension notice in hand. His union attorney stood in the doorway, expression grim. They're building a case for termination, the attorney said. My recommendation is full cooperation to mitigate damages. Reese's face hardened. I was doing my job, following procedure. That's the problem, his attorney responded. If that was procedure, the procedure itself was illegal. Meanwhile, Grant provided testimony to FBI investigators. His honesty about department practices was damning but potentially redemptive for his own career. It was understood that certain vehicles, certain people warranted additional scrutiny, he explained, discomfort evident in his posture. Not written policy, but definitely understood. Who conveyed this understanding? Agent Khan asked. Training officers, sergeants, including Reese. At the state capitol, the governor stood before cameras announcing a special commission on police reform. We've invited General Hale to consult on best practices ensuring constitutional policing throughout our state. In Washington, Hale moved between meetings with congressional leaders. His unique position, a general who experienced profiling firsthand, gave him unprecedented credibility with lawmakers across the political spectrum. General, would you say this incident is representative of what military personnel of color routinely experience? A senator asked during a hearing. Senator, the data speaks for itself, Hale responded evenly. This wasn't extraordinary, it was ordinary. That's the problem. The exchange made evening news broadcasts nationwide, amplifying attention on the issue. At the State Police Academy, instructors implemented new training protocols immediately. Cadets watched body cam footage from Hale's detention, pausing to identify each violation of law and policy. This is what unconscious bias looks like in action, the instructor explained. This is how careers end and departments face federal oversight. The ripple effects continued expanding. The Department of Justice placed the town's police department under a consent decree, establishing federal oversight of operations, training, and discipline. This agreement isn't punitive, the DOJ spokesperson explained to assembled media. It's corrective, a pathway to constitutional policing. Department-wide audits revealed patterns extending beyond Reese's individual actions. Traffic stop data showed racial disparities that could not be explained by demographics or crime rates. Internal communications revealed casual bias embedded in department culture. Meanwhile, Hale conducted press interviews selectively, always redirecting from his personal experience to the systemic issues at stake. Do you want Officer Reese fired? An interviewer asked directly. I want proper accountability and systemic change, Hale responded. This isn't about one officer or even one department. It's about aligning practices with constitutional principles. At the Pentagon, military leadership implemented Hale's recommendations for protecting service members off base. New reporting systems allowed personnel to document civil rights concerns. Legal support offices expanded their scope to include incidents in surrounding communities. Community liaison positions were created to build relationships with local law enforcement. The defense secretary announced these changes in a press conference. What happened to General Hale highlights vulnerabilities affecting our personnel daily. We're addressing these issues comprehensively to ensure all who serve this nation receive the respect and protection they deserve. Reese's disciplinary hearing was scheduled. The charges were extensive: civil rights violations, falsifying reports, improper detention, failure to activate body camera, evidence mishandling. Hale declined to attend personally but submitted a formal statement focused on policy failures rather than personal grievances. His focus remained on systemic rather than individual justice, transforming his experience into institutional improvement. As the hearing approached, public attention intensified. Activists organized rallies demanding accountability. Police unions issued statements about due process and officer protections. Editorial pages debated the broader implications for policing nationwide. Through it all, Hale maintained his characteristic composure, navigating political pressures with the same strategic thinking that distinguished his military career. Each interview, each testimony, each recommendation was precisely calibrated to achieve maximum institutional impact rather than personal vindication. As Hale's reforms gained momentum nationally, Officer Reese made a decision that surprised everyone involved in the case. The disciplinary hearing room sat silent except for the soft whir of recording equipment. Sunlight filtered through Venetian blinds, casting striped shadows across the long table where the review board members sat with expressions of professional neutrality. The room overflowed with officials, media representatives, and community members, all drawn to the culmination of a case that had transcended local boundaries. Reese sat alone at a small table, posture rigid with defensive tension. His union representation occupied a chair nearby, but the deliberate distance between them spoke volumes. The evidence against Reese sat in neat stacks: case files, complaint histories, and transcripts that collectively told a damning story. The board chairperson opened the proceedings with formal gravity. This hearing will determine appropriate administrative action regarding Officer Harlan Reese's conduct during the unlawful detention of Major General Darius Hale. What followed was a methodical dismantling of Reese's career. The review board presented findings from their investigation: a pattern of biased policing extending back years, multiple excessive force complaints consistently minimized, incident reports containing discrepancies that supervisors overlooked. Hale's detention emerged not as an isolated error, but as the predictable culmination of long-established patterns. Reese's attorney attempted to construct a defense around departmental practices. Officer Reese was following established procedures for suspicious vehicles and persons. A board member leaned forward. Which procedure authorizes detention without probable cause? Please cite the specific policy. The attorney faltered, shuffling through papers without finding an answer that did not further incriminate his client. Chief Langford testified next, walking a precarious line between accountability and institutional protection. His testimony revealed the department's systemic failures while attempting to distance leadership from individual officers' actions. We provide training on constitutional policing, Langford stated. Officer Reese received this training annually. Yet the department took no meaningful action on his previous complaints. The question landed like a hammer. Langford's hesitation spoke volumes. The disciplinary system needed improvement. Grant took the stand next, his youthful face now bearing the weight of difficult truths. His testimony proved devastating in its honesty, revealing the unwritten rules that shape department culture. I was taught to look for indicators that weren't really indicators at all, Grant explained, voice steady despite his obvious discomfort. Expensive vehicles driven by minorities, out-of-state plates in certain neighborhoods, things that aren't actually suspicious but were treated as if they were. Who taught you these practices? The board asked. Senior officers, including Sergeant Reese. FBI agent Lena Cruz presented findings from their broader investigation, contextualizing Reese's actions within patterns affecting hundreds of citizens over years. Charts displayed traffic stop disparities that statistics alone could not explain away. As evidence mounted inexorably, Reese recognized the inevitable outcome. When called to testify, he faced a pivotal choice between continued defiance and belated honesty. In a moment that surprised the entire room, he chose the latter. I believed I was doing my job as I was trained to do it, Reese began, voice subdued but clear. A board member leaned forward. Were you trained to profile citizens based on race? Reese met their gaze directly. Not explicitly, but implicitly every day. His admission shifted the atmosphere subtly, not toward forgiveness, but toward a more complete understanding of the institutional failures at work. The way commendations were handed out, the stories told in the break room, who got promoted, it all sent a message about what kind of policing was rewarded, Reese continued. I can't defend what I did to General Hale, but I'm not the only one who did it. His words implicated not just himself, but an entire culture, perhaps his first act of genuine service to the community he claimed to protect. The board deliberated briefly before delivering their unanimous decision. Termination effective immediately, with referral to the district attorney for criminal charges related to civil rights violations. As Reese surrendered his badge and service weapon, symbols of authority he failed to honor, the weight of consequence finally registered on his face. He passed Grant in the hallway, their eyes meeting briefly. They're making an example of me, Reese said, bitterness edging his voice. Grant shook his head. No, they're making a correction. The distinction mattered. Not punishment for its own sake, but accountability as a pathway to reform. Meanwhile, Hale received the news at the Pentagon while reviewing implementation plans for nationwide training initiatives. He acknowledged the information with a single nod. No celebration, no vindication, just quiet recognition that one part of a larger process had reached completion. As news of Reese's termination broke, Hale made a decision about his own career that would transform the national conversation. Later, sunlight glinted off the polished buttons of Hale's dress uniform as he stood before the newest class of police academy graduates. His presence commanded attention without effort, a lifetime of leadership visible in his bearing. This marks one of my final appearances in military uniform, Hale announced to the attentive cadets. Tomorrow I officially retire from active military service. A murmur ran through the audience. Hale had become a national figure. His name was synonymous with the civil rights reforms sweeping law enforcement agencies nationwide. I've accepted appointment as director of a new joint DoD-DOJ task force on civil rights and community policing, he continued. The career pivot surprised no one who had followed his advocacy. Hale surveyed the diverse faces before him. The academy class reflected demographic changes implemented since the reforms began. Your badge is not authority, he told them. It is responsibility. It is a promise to protect constitutional rights, not just public safety. The cadets absorbed his words with the seriousness they deserved. Many had enrolled specifically because of the changes Hale's case inspired. In Washington, D.C., a congressional hearing room buzzed with anticipation. The Hale Act, comprehensive legislation addressing qualified immunity, police training standards, and accountability measures, moved toward a floor vote with rare bipartisan support. A senator referenced data from Hale's Pentagon study. These patterns transcend geography and department size. The consistency of these violations demands federal response. Hale testified with characteristic precision. This legislation isn't punitive, it's protective of citizens' rights and officers' integrity alike. Across the country, police departments implemented new training protocols, oversight mechanisms, and community engagement requirements. Some embraced the changes voluntarily, others did so under consent decrees similar to the one in the town. In the town itself, a new police chief, Rebecca Sanders, recruited specifically for her reform credentials, reviewed applications for department positions. The force was rebuilding under federal supervision, old practices systematically replaced with constitutional alternatives. Chief Sanders looked up from her desk as Officer Grant entered hesitantly. He had resigned during the investigations, unwilling to continue under the old regime. You've reapplied, Sanders observed, studying his file. Why should I rehire you after what happened? Grant met her gaze directly. Because I learned the hardest lesson early. I know the cost of moral failure now. His honesty earned him a second chance under strict probation, an opportunity to help build the department's new culture from within. At military bases nationwide, new community relations offices opened their doors. Service members now had clear reporting channels for civil rights concerns arising off base. Legal support teams expanded their scope to include incidents in surrounding communities. The Hale Task Force published its first findings, preliminary data showing measurable improvements in civil rights compliance around military installations. The report made front-page news and triggered policy reviews in police departments nationwide. At a community center in the town, Hale, now in civilian attire, addressed residents, including many who had witnessed his detention that fateful day. Change isn't about punishment, he explained, voice carrying the same authority without the uniform. It's about alignment, aligning practices with principles we already claim to hold. Mrs. Eleanor Hayes, the gas station owner who witnessed the initial incident, stood to speak. What happened to you was terrible, General, but the changes we've seen since, maybe something good came from it. Hale acknowledged this complex truth with a nod. Sometimes progress requires painful catalysts. The reforms continued expanding outward like ripples in still water. Police academies revised curricula nationwide. Departments implemented early warning systems to identify problematic officer patterns before they escalated. Community oversight boards gained meaningful authority rather than serving as mere window dressing. Haley monitored these developments not with the satisfaction of personal vindication, but with the measured assessment of a strategist. Each implementation report, each policy change, each statistical improvement represented a small victory in a campaign he now led full-time. A plain envelope arrived at Hale's office, postmarked from the town, containing a message he never expected to receive. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Hale's desk at task force headquarters. Time had passed since the incident that transformed a routine motorcycle ride into a catalyst for national reform. Hale's assistant placed a letter on his desk, an unremarkable white envelope, no return address, postmarked from the town. Hale opened it carefully, unfolding a single handwritten page. The penmanship was precise, deliberate, Harlan Reese's signature at the bottom. Reese's words acknowledged his mistakes without seeking absolution. "I won't insult you by asking forgiveness," he wrote. "Some actions don't deserve it." He described his journey since losing his badge, therapy addressing long-buried biases, community service in neighborhoods he once patrolled with suspicion, difficult conversations with his own children about why their father no longer wore a uniform. "I can't undo what I did," Reese concluded, "but I'm trying to understand why I did it. That understanding doesn't excuse anything. Maybe it prevents someone else from making the same choices." Hale read thoughtfully, expression revealing neither satisfaction nor resentment. He placed the letter in his desk drawer rather than the official file, a human communication separate from institutional documentation. Later that week, Hale drove to the town, the custom Harley replaced with an understated sedan. The town had transformed, not just the police department, but the community's relationship with it. Citizens attended oversight meetings that once happened behind closed doors. Officers walked beats they previously only drove through. Hale visited the roadside where he was detained. The spot now bore a small bronze plaque, Site of the Hale Incident, a catalyst for change. He read it without comment, understanding the dual purpose it served, reminder and warning. At the police station, Chief Sanders welcomed Hale into an office once occupied by Langford, who had resigned shortly after the federal investigation began. Their discussion focused on sustainability, ensuring reforms outlasted the initial momentum and media attention. "The real test comes when the spotlight fades," Sanders acknowledged. "That's why structural change matters more than personnel changes," Hale responded. "Systems outlast individuals." They reviewed data showing dramatic reductions in biased enforcement patterns. Complaint numbers initially rose as citizens gained confidence in the new reporting systems, then fell as officer behavior genuinely improved. Traffic stops showed no racial disparities for the first time in department history. That evening, Hale spoke at a community forum. The audience included former Chief Langford, now working with a police reform advocacy group. His expertise in departmental resistance to change proved valuable from the opposite perspective. Mrs. Hayes sat near the front, nodding at points she found particularly meaningful. Frank Ellison, the veteran who made the crucial phone call that day, attended with his grandson, Lieutenant David Ellison. Most surprising to Hale, Officer Grant, now Field Training Officer Grant, sat attentively in his uniform, notebook open. His responsibility now included teaching new recruits proper procedure and ethical policing, the transformation from reluctant follower to active reformer evident in his engaged presence. Hale acknowledged them all in his remarks, highlighting the complex human dimensions beyond the policies and statistics. "Time ago, I experienced what thousands of citizens experience daily," Hale stated simply. "The difference wasn't in the incident, but in the response to it." He outlined the progress made with characteristic precision, measurable decreases in civil rights complaints, improved community trust metrics, new accountability systems functioning as designed. "We didn't need new values," Hale concluded. "We needed to align our practices with the values we already professed." As the forum ended, Grant approached Hale with measured confidence that had not been present before. "Sir, I'm training new officers now," he said. "I tell them your story every week." Hale nodded. "Tell them their own stories too. Everyone has moments when they choose between what's easy and what's right." They shook hands, a moment of genuine connection across the divide that once separated them. Later, driving away from the town, Hale reflected on the distance traveled since that hot afternoon when he knelt on burning asphalt. His phone rang, the White House calling about expanding his task force's recommendations nationally. The moral crystallized in his mind as he answered, "True authority comes not from power, but from principle." If this story moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to PP Stories now and hit that notification bell to ensure you never miss our latest uploads. Join our community of viewers who understand that stories have power.